Kristen is a dear friend of the Unicorn Foundation. We met again back in about 2010. Kristen's here to share her story of living with a neuroendocrine tumour. Thank you, Simone. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I'm the lady on the website, actually, who did a lovely news story with Professor Rod Hicks. So you'll see me, the Channel 7 news story told my story about my journey with a NET tumour. I was 43 when I was diagnosed with a neuroendocrine tumour. It took approximately 5 years to be diagnosed, so all the stats that I see here today, I just keep nodding my head and going, yes, 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 that's me, that's me. I had symptoms of irritable bowel, chronic thrush. I had terrible rashes in my groin, rashes in my legs. I had backache. I had sore mouth with sores around my lips. I had chronic nail infections, and just, you know, the list went on. I visited two of my GPs, my local doctor, and they kept referring me to specialists. They kept, you know, they really weren't quite sure what was wrong with me. I actually thought I was going through early menopause. I was only 43. I really did not know what was wrong with me, and I felt that no one was really listening to me, to the point where the amount of specialists that I saw was incredible. I saw skin specialists, I saw immunologists, I saw an oral specialist, I saw, you know, you name it, I saw these specialists. And unfortunately, they just really didn't know what to do with me, so they just prescribed antibiotics. They pumped me with so many antibiotics that my immune system was so compromised that to the point where they even gave me so many steroid creams. And at one time my husband said, this has got to stop. You know, at times I couldn't get out of bed, and it was quite debilitating. So, and to the point where I was even prescribed antidepressants because they thought I was quite paranoid, and I felt that, you know, there's something not right with me, but, you know, what exactly is wrong with me? Now, when I was seeing some leading specialists in Melbourne, and to the point where one was actually a vulva specialist. So, girls, there's one out there. And you wouldn't want to go to a dinner party and tell someone what you did for a living. But anyway, I was seeing her for approximately 18 months at the Austin Hospital, and she continually kept giving me antibiotics, and she said to me, look, one day we'll find an answer to your problem. You know, I presented myself with rashes in the groin, and she said, some doctor will come along, I'm sure from overseas, and they'll see your rash and they'll tell us what's wrong with you. And I was getting very frustrated. My husband actually at one appointment confronted her and said, you know, you don't seem to, you know, you keep giving her antibiotics and creams and you don't seem to have an answer, you know. And she got quite offended by his comment, actually, and quite, you know, well, you know, we're doing everything we possibly can, but we just didn't have any answers. To the point where I kept telling her about irritable bowel. And I said, look, you know, I just feel, you know, I eat something within a half an hour, it just goes right through me. And I said to her, you know, she said to me, she goes, well, perhaps you might have gallstones. So she said to me, you might need to have an ultrasound. But the funny thing was, up until that moment, in 5 years, not one doctor, not one GP, not one specialist ever suggested that I have a scan, not one. And I just took that as, I felt quite, in hindsight, I felt quite, why didn't I ask them? But I just knew that these doctors were the professionals and they knew what they were doing, and I just trusted them, and at no stage at all did I ever think that I had cancer. So we went for the ultrasound, and yes, they found a tumour, a neuroendocrine tumour the size of a lemon in my pancreas, which was wrapped around my aorta. I had 15 metastases in my liver, And so it was quite a relief for me. I was actually relieved that finally I had an answer. And but at the same time, I was in a bit of shock. It was for a split second, I remember going to the toilet and thought, well, I thought the F word, but I won't say that. But I thought, okay, so we came back. I came back to the room. My husband questioned the GP when she had the results, and he said, why didn't you ever scan her? And she said, well, we just didn't understand the symptoms. We'd never seen those type of symptoms before. And saying that, she collapsed in the chair. She started to cry. And I thought, well, that's not a really upbeating sort of, moment in my life. So we stormed out of the office, and I can still recall the receptionist actually asking, excuse me, to my husband, you need to settle the bill. And I just said, don't you dare, and we just walked out. So it was quite frustrating. So I was sent to an oncologist, and my first oncologist suggested that I have chemotherapy for 3 months. And to no avail, nothing worked. And I had a very interesting conversation with him after the chemotherapy had finished, and he said, well, this is not working. And in his words, he said to me, this will get you. He said, you need to sort out your financial affairs. And for a split second there, I knew, well, I thought I was in a bit of trouble. I thought my life was over. So we left I can still recall the moment very clearly. I left the hospital. I was in the car park, and for a split second I thought, no, I just realised that my life was not over. And the funny thing was, he didn't even offer me a second opinion. So to my credit, I decided to opt for a second opinion, and thankfully my second oncologist had connections with Peter McCallum, and that's where I met the wonderful team of Rod Hicks and the beautiful Julie and Mark, who I'm not sure who are here, and Tim Ackhurst and all the team at Peter McCallum. So I started, I went on a waiting list for 18 months, and unfortunately that's how long I had to wait for the treatment, because I had to get really, really sick before I was eligible to have the treatment. And a lot of patients I've heard, never quite make it. So I struggled quite a lot, and it was a tough time in my life. I was, I'm married with 2 daughters. We were running our own business at the time. I couldn't work at that time, so we had to employ people. So it was really a difficult time in our lives. In the meantime, I was on the waiting list, and I can still recall a moment in the office with Rod and his team, and I remember Tim Ackhurst. He's here today, I think, somewhere. Where are you, Tim? The lovely Tim Ackhurst. He said to me, "We have this treatment, and we think this is going to work for you." And I kind of went, "Wow, that's a really big statement." So we started the treatment. I was due to have 5 treatments of the radionuclide therapy, and I ended up only having 3 because the results were amazing. The tumour in the pancreas shrunk to a point where it was operable, and the 15 tumours in the liver disappeared. And they couldn't believe the results. They'd never seen, well, I believe there was only a couple of us that the results were quite amazing. So, so it enabled me to, an operation was, I can't think of the word, was undertaken. So it was suggested that I had an operation where they took 80% of my pancreas, and the lovely Ben Thompson, my surgeon who is here today, he said it's going to be a really difficult operation, and operating on the pancreas is quite a delicate organ. So I was a little bit nervous about that. And he said, we've got to scrape away the tumour from the portal vein, which it had become close to. So he said, if we, we could scrape that artery, and it could mean that you could bleed to death. And I'm thinking, wow, this is really a difficult decision, but I just wanted to get rid of it. I wanted to get rid of this little bit of tumour that was left. And I actually asked Ben to show me a photo of the tumour after the operation. So they took 80% of my pancreas. They left the head of my pancreas, and they thought that I would become a diabetic. And as it turned out, I didn't, because that's the most important part of the pancreas, I believe. They took out my spleen, my gallbladder, and a little part of my liver, which they thought was a little tiny bit of maybe a bit of a tumour that was left there. And I recall Ben in the recovery room, he said to me, he said, look, you know, everything went really well. He didn't tell me he was going to take the gallbladder, but he said, yeah, we took that too. We just took that one out too, you know. And I said, oh, okay, you know, do you reckon you maybe leave the heart and a few other things in there, you know, to keep you going? And he said, but a month later, I actually wanted to see a photo of the tumour. I actually had to see it. For me, it was just an ending to this long 10 years of suffering, and I just had to see it, and that was quite, I can't think of the word, it was quite sort of a final thing for me. So as it turned out, I got some results back. I remember Ben rang me and he said the results were all clear, and I was in remission, and it was an amazing, amazing moment in my life. I think I cried. The support I had from my family was incredible, and friends. And of course the Unicorn Foundation, who I found out through Peter McCallum, who were a great support at the time when I went to support meetings. And it was great to meet people who had the same sort of symptoms as myself, so, you know, I wasn't alone. I just wanted to mention that I took a little trip back to that first oncologist, actually, and I made an appointment with him. I went by myself. I told my husband, but I didn't tell my family, and I made an appointment, and I said to him, I said, do you remember me? And he said, yes, but mind you, he did have a computer in front of him because he probably wouldn't have remembered who I was. And he said to me, I said, do you remember what you told me a couple of years ago? And he goes, oh, no, you might need to refresh my memory. I said, you told me, your words were, it will get you. And I said, I did my homework on him, and I knew he had 2 daughters. I have 2 daughters. And I said, how would you like to be told that your life was going to be over? And I said, and guess what? Today I'm here standing in front of you in remission. And he said to me, he said, wow. He said to me, he said, I'm quite flattered that you've come back to see me. And I'm not a very, I've been quite confronting I'm not a very confident person, but over the years I've become quite confident when it comes to my life. And in my mind, I thought, wow, this guy's got a really big God complex. I thought, no one actually comes back and confronts these doctors. And I felt like I needed to make him accountable for his actions, because I believe that he was actually a specialist in melanomas, so I don't know why I was even referred to him in the first place. But anyway, I gave him a summary of a speech I made at our My Night Ball, where I told my story, and I said, I want you to read this, and I want you to remember me, and I want you to remember never, ever tell anybody that your life is over when you don't really know yourself, because he really didn't know a lot about neuroendocrine tumours. And to this day, I know that he has referred patients to this type of treatment, and that was my whole purpose. But I wanted to make him accountable for his actions, and I, if I listened to him and walked out into that car park, I wouldn't be standing here today in total remission. But unfortunately, I'll be quick, Simone, October last year, when I went back after my scans, I continued to see Ben after my operation. He keeps close tabs on me yearly. And he said, look, we'll keep doing scans. I said, oh, okay, I feel great, Rod's actually told me I'm cured. And I went, whoa, cured, that's a really good word, And, but he said to me, no, we'll do a scan. So unfortunately, October last year, we picked up the fact that I had a couple of tumours in my brain. And I went, bugger. Well, I've thought of a better word than that. And I thought, oh my God, why the brain? I kind of, for a moment there, I thought, oh shit, I'm in a bit of trouble here. The brain, that's not good. So Ben referred me to a lady the Royal Melbourne, and I had some radiotherapy in March this year, and I had 3 rounds of 20-minute radiation. Had a mask, and it's quite daunting. You have a mask and you have it fitted to your head, and it's quite secure, but I managed to get my way through that, and as of this year, I'm back into remission, so I'm totally cancer-free. So my, I'd like to inspire anyone here today who's fighting a NET tumour. I plan on writing a book. I'm in the process of a writer who is actually going to tell my story. So watch this space, and I would love to inspire people and tell them about my story, because Rod has a lovely little sign in his office, and he pointed to me when I was going through the brain tumours. He said, the sign actually says, "Never, ever give up." And it's a beautiful saying, and along the way, I've embraced a lot of Eastern medicine along with the terrific Western medicine. I meditate. I believe in yoga. I believe in eating well. I believe in just living a healthy life, and there's 3 men who have helped me the most in my battle with my condition, and obviously that's Professor Rod Hicks and his amazing team, Dr. Ben Thompson, and a particular person, Professor Avni Sali. You may have heard of him, who taught me about Eastern medicine, and he inspired me on how to live a healthy life through mind, body and soul, and he has changed my thinking about how I live my life today. And I just want to finish on a note that I'm thinking of, the dreaded C word. It's not a good C word, but I've got a better C word. I've got a couple of good C words. But I've got a name for my book, and I hope to call it Courageous and Cured. Thank you for listening.